In the third week of April 2021, Craig Lund called his primary seed supplier and was told that certified oat seed in his preferred variety was exhausted for the season. The supplier had sold out. The backup supplier had a 12-week lead time. 12 weeks out from the third week of April was mid-July. The oat planting window in Fillmore County, Minnesota closes in late April. Mid-July is not planting time. Mid-July is when the oat crop, if you had managed to plant it in April, was already heading out. Craig said, "What do I do?" The seed rep said, "We can offer you a different variety with available inventory, but the trial data on it for your region is limited." Craig said, "How limited?" 3 location years. The rep said, "That is not a lot of data for a specific rotation situation." Craig hung up. He called his second supplier. They had oat seed in a variety he had not grown before. He asked for the trial data. They emailed him 4 pages. The variety had been tested in Wisconsin and South Dakota. Fillmore County, Minnesota is neither Wisconsin nor South Dakota in any agronomically relevant sense. He called his third supplier. They were out entirely. He sat at his kitchen table for a while. Then he called Marta Ness. He had driven past the Ness farm 3 times a week for 20 years. He knew she ran oats in her rotation because the Ness farm had run oats in rotation since before Craig was born, and Marta had not changed that. He knew she had never bought certified commercial seed for her oats. He knew this because he had asked her about it in 2008 when a seed company rep had been talking about the yield advantage of certified varieties, and Marta said she wasn't buying. "Why?" Craig had asked. "I grow what my grandfather grew," Marta had said. "I clean it and save it and plant it again. It knows this ground." He had thought at the time that this was charming and slightly impractical. He had bought the certified variety and gotten a yield that was marginally better than his previous year and not thought about it again. Now it was April of 2021 and he had no seed. "Marta," he said when she answered. "Craig, I don't have oat seed. My supplier is out." He paused. "I know you save your own." "I do." Craig said, "What are you growing?" Marta said, "Portage, open-pollinated. My grandfather brought the variety to this farm in '48. I have cleaned and selected it every fall since." Craig said, "How much do you have?" Marta was quiet for a moment. She said, "Come over. Let me tell you about Einar Ness because you need to understand what he built before you can understand what Marta was sitting on in April of 2021. Einar had come to Fillmore County from Norway in 1937, a young man of 28. He had worked for 2 years on a neighbor's farm before saving enough to buy the 280-acre Ness place in 1939. He had brought one thing from Norway that had no direct equivalent in Fillmore County, not a practice or a piece of equipment, a conviction, a Norwegian farmer's understanding, absorbed from his own father and grandfather across 40 years of watching the seed supply of a small country that had been occupied and blockaded at various points in its history, that a farm's fundamental independence rested on its ability to reproduce its own seed stock. You could lose a machine and borrow or buy another. You could lose a building and build another. But if you became entirely dependent on an external source for the seed you grew, the foundation of every crop, you had made yourself vulnerable in a way that no amount of good farming elsewhere could protect against. Einar did not explain this to his neighbors in 1939. He simply ran his farm the way his father had run his, which included keeping a dedicated seed bin, cleaning his own seed every fall, and selecting the best heads from each crop to maintain and improve the variety's adaptation to his specific ground over time. He bought the Portage oat variety from a Minnesota-certified seed source in 1948, the one time in his farming career he bought commercial oat seed. He grew it through one full season, selected the best panicles from the best performing rows, cleaned that seed through the hand-cranked fanning mill he had acquired in 1952, and stored it in the dedicated seed bin in the northeast corner of the granary. He built that bin in 1948 from pine boards, smooth planed on the inside to prevent moisture pockets that harbor mold, 8 feet square and 4 feet tall, with a wooden lid on a piano hinge and a hasp closure. It cost him nothing beyond his own time and the leftover lumber from the granary construction. The seed bin had one rule, and Einar told it to his daughter, and she told Marta. Nothing goes in the seed bin that has not passed the germination test. If the rate was below 85%, you increased your seeding rate to compensate, but you also set aside a portion of the crop for evaluation and rogued out the poor performers before they contributed to next year's seed. The bin was not for convenience, it was for continuity. He planted from that seed in 1949. He cleaned it and selected it and planted it again in 1950 and in every year after that, until his health prevented him from farming in 1978. 30 years of continuous improvement of the same variety on the same ground. When his daughter took over in 1978, and again when Marta took over in 1999, the instruction was the same. Clean the seed, save the best. Always run the germination test before you commit to a planting rate. By 2021, the Portage variety in Marta's seed bin had been grown and selected on Ness ground for 73 consecutive years. It was not the same as the 1948 certified Portage. It was what 73 years of selection for germination rate, tillering, straw strength, and disease tolerance on a specific 280-acre farm in Fillmore County, Minnesota, had made it. It knew the ground. That was not a sentimental expression. It was an agronomic description of what continuous selection on a specific site produces. The seed company's certified variety had been tested in 3 location years. The Ness Portage had been tested in 73 location years on the same location. Now let me tell you about what Craig found when he drove over that afternoon. He had expected a farm bin with some old variety seed in it. What he found when Marta opened the granary and lifted the seed bin lid was something that looked like evidence of a system. Cloth bags labeled in pencil, each one dated and noted with the germination test result, the most recent bag from the previous fall's cleaning. Everything organized with the specific neatness of a practice that had been maintained rather than improvised. Marta pulled out the most recent bag. She held it toward him. The label said, Portage OP, 2020 harvest, germ 93%, cleaned October 12, 2020. Craig looked at the label. He said, 93% germination. Marta said, that is what it tested at in October. She paused. I will run another test before we plant. She reached into her jacket pocket and produced the glass jar, the germination test jar. a small, wide-mouthed jar with a damp paper towel folded inside. She pulled 20 seeds from the bag, counted them out on the bin lid, placed them on the damp paper towel, sealed the jar, and set it on the granary shelf. 5 days. Craig watched her do this. He had not run a germination test since his father stopped saving seed. He said, "How long does it take?" 5 days, Marta said. "This will run above 90. It always has from October cleaned seed." Craig said, "How much do you have?" Marta did the calculation in her head. She said, "Enough for my acres and about 200 pounds over." She looked at Craig. "You farm how much oats?" 80 acres, Craig said. Marta said, "I can seed 80 acres at 100 pounds per acre with what I have and keep my own lot intact. 8,000 pounds out of my surplus and reserves." The 8,000 pounds. Craig had 80 acres. That was exactly what he needed. Craig said, "What do you want for it?" Marta said, "Same rate my grandfather charged for seed." She found the composition notebook on the nail beside the bin. The oldest entry in Einar's handwriting from 1953 read, "Seed shared with neighbor at cost of cleaning and storage." She looked at Craig. Einar charged cost. "I'll charge you the cost of my cleaning time and storage, $40 per 100 pounds. She paused. "The seed itself came from this ground. It does not belong to a seed company. It belongs to the next planting. 8,000 pounds at $40 per 100 pounds, $3,200. Craig paid it without negotiating. Let me tell you about the two paths. Because across 73 years they ran alongside each other in Fillmore County, and the difference between them was not visible in any single good year. It was only visible in the spring of 2021. Path 1, Craig Lund and the commercial supply. In every normal year, Craig's certified commercial seed delivered what it promised: consistent germination, known disease tolerance, published trial data, seed treatment for early season disease protection. The certified system worked. In good years with available supply, Craig could compare varieties, choose for specific characteristics, and plant with a known baseline. The system was genuinely better in every way it worked correctly. It failed in one specific way in the spring of 2021. The seed was not there. Not at his preferred variety. Not at adequate lead time. In a single season, all the advantages of the certified system became irrelevant because the supply chain had broken. Path 2, Marta Ness and the seed bin. In every normal year, Marta's open-pollinated Portage produced yields comparable to, but not superior to, the certified varieties. The certified varieties had marginally better yield potential in trial data. In the spring of 2021, Marta had seed. That was the entire advantage. Not better yield, not lower cost in a normal year. Simply, she had seed when the supply chain failed, and Craig did not. How often does the supply chain fail? In a 40-year farming career, serious commercial seed supply disruptions for a specific crop and region might occur 2 or 3 times. In Craig's father's career, once. In Einar's career, once or twice. In Marta's career, to 2021, once. But when the supply chain fails in the one year, it fails. The farmer who has seed plants. The farmer who does not, does not. Einar had understood this with the clarity of a man from a country that knew what supply disruptions looked like. He had built the seed bin in 1948 as insurance against a disruption that did not come for 73 years. When it came, The bin was full. Let me tell you about the accounting, because the numbers are the story. Craig planted his 80 oat acres with Ness seed. The crop came in at 88 bushels per acre. His agronomist had estimated the rotation value of oats at roughly $40 per acre in improved following crop yields. On 80 acres, with an oat yield of 88 bushels per acre at $3.50 per bushel, the total value of planting versus not planting was approximately $25,400. But he had preserved $25,400 in crop and rotation value by paying $3,200 to Marta Ness. If you want to know what Craig did the following fall, and whether he called Marta in August about cleaning equipment, subscribe to The Honest Farmer. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Tell me if your family ever saved seed. In August of 2021, Craig called Marta. She was in the oat field. "Crop looks good," he said. "91 bushels to the acre in the test strips," she said. "Yours?" 88. He was quiet for a moment. "I want to save some of this for next year's seed." He paused. "I don't have a seed cleaner," Marta said. "The fanning mill is in the barn. I'll show you how to use it. Come on the last Saturday of October. Bring the heaviest heads from the straightest straw, the ones that held upright in the wet week in July." He said, "How do I know which ones those are?" She said, "You walk the field and you look. The plants that stood when the others leaned, those are the ones you want to carry forward." She paused. Einar always said, "Select for what you want the field to survive. If it survived the hard week, select from it." He came on the last Saturday of October with 200 pounds of hand-selected oat heads from the best rows of his field. Marta ran the fanning mill for him. She explained each screen size, each adjustment, each thing to watch for. She showed him how to run the germination test and record the result. She showed him the label system. He went home with 180 pounds of cleaned, tested, labeled oat seed in a cloth sack. He wrote, "Portage OP, selected from 2021 Ness seed, germ 89%, cleaned October 30th, 2021. He built a seed bin over the winter, 6 feet by 6 feet, pine boards, smooth planed interior, piano hinge on the lid, hasp. He used Einar's as the model. He measured it and copied the dimensions. Marta came to look when it was done. She ran her hand along the smooth pine interior the way Einar had run his hand along it after he built it, checking for roughness that could harbor moisture. "It looks like Einar's," she said. "I used his as the model." Marta said, "Put the notebook on a nail beside it. Don't keep it inside the bin." She found a nail, and he drove it. He hung the composition notebook on it. New, the first entry, his 2021 harvest data. Marta said, "Einar's notebook is still in the granary, 73 years of entries." Craig looked at his notebook with its one entry. He said, "I know." He looked at Marta. "It takes time." She said, "It takes every year." She turned toward the door. "Do not skip a year." She said it the way Einar said things he considered important, once without explanation, trusting the listener to understand why. Craig has not skipped since. Let me tell you the last thing, because it is the thing Einar Ness would have wanted you to know. Einar died in 1982 at the age of 73. He had farmed the Ness place for 43 years and had never bought a bag of commercial oat seed after 1948. He had cleaned and saved and selected every fall for 30 years, building a variety that was his farm's variety in a way that no certified commercial seed ever was or ever could be. He had told Marta's mother in 1971 that a farmer who buys all his seed every year has made himself dependent on something he does not control. He had said it once. He did not repeat it because a man who repeats himself does not trust his listener to have heard him the first time, and Einar trusted his listeners. Marta heard it secondhand from her mother when she was 12. She understood it completely, not as a warning, as a description of how farming worked when it worked correctly. The farm producing its own inputs from its own land, the seed bin full, the germination test run, the label written in pencil, the notebook on the nail. That is what it looks like when a farm is seed independent. The seed that next spring's crop will grow from is in a bin in the granary where you built it 73 years ago, and every generation since has kept it full. Subscribe to The Honest Farmer for more stories like this one. Stories of the farms that kept what allowed them to be independent, all that maintained the practices that looked unnecessary for 50 years and proved essential in the 1 year the supply chain failed. Of the grandfathers who said a thing once and trusted the next generation to understand it. Of the seed bins built from pine lumber and maintained with a germination jar and a composition notebook, and nothing more complicated than the decision to clean what you grow and save the best and plant it again. Hit the bell so you do not miss the next one. Tell me in the comments, did your family save seed? What variety? Is it still going? The Ness seed bin is in the northeast corner of the granary. Einar built it in 1948. The Portage oats in it have been selected on that ground for 73 years. The germination test jar is in Marta's jacket pocket every April. The notebook is on the nail. Craig Lund's seed bin is in the corner of his granary. He built it in the winter of 2021. His notebook has 3 entries now. The variety is still young on his ground, but it is getting to know it. That is how it starts. 1 year, then another, then the year after that. The seed does not know what year it is. It only knows the ground and what the ground demands, and whether the person who cleaned it selected for the plants that answered those demands. Einar knew this in 1948. He built the bin. He said what he needed to say once. He kept cleaning seed. The bin is full.